Hi, my name is Liz Spath. I'm a working mom and I'm an employee benefits expert. At Mercer, I work with employers to help design and manage employee benefit programs for my clients. And today I'm going to talk about how you can support your employees through caregiver support programs during this crisis in 2020. I'll share data, trends, and ideas, as well as Mercer's point of view on this topic. So late last year, I was out talking to clients and speaking at seminars about how employers can really differentiate themselves and stand out as one of the best places to work by supporting parents and families. And as part of their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, or just as one of their, as part of a wellness program, part of an employee support program, supporting work-life balance. And last year in the war for talent, this was a great way for an employer to really stand out and be different, and so they can attract and recruit the best talent. And the prevalence of some of these programs was growing pretty slowly, but starting to grow and starting to become more common. And we were really trending in the right direction. And then there was a global pandemic, 2020 hit. And now it's among many other areas of concern in this year, the caregiving crisis is pretty front and center with my clients. And so it's no longer considered a nice to have or a way to stand out amongst your peers to offer caregiving support. It is now a real serious business issue. And in particular, this issue, it not only affects parents and families and the non-parents in your population, but it affects business. Specifically, businesses are very concerned about productivity. They are concerned about retaining their talent as families are starting to really struggle with having to make choices around their children and their work. We're seeing some turnover among some of the best talent, and that's becoming a big concern for employers. But non-parents as well are concerned about their workload. And as a business, some of the business leaders we're hearing are getting nervous about the impact on their culture. They maybe have a culture they've been very proud of, and this issue creates a real problem for them in terms of what it's like to work there at their company. And they're also worried about putting in a flexibility-based program that they may have to take back at some point in the future. So there's a lot of issues, not the least of which is how this issue is impacting minorities disproportionately. Women and people of color in particular are going to be impacted the most. There's a piece of information on this slide, a little data point here on the right, but that Black parents who have problems finding childcare tend to quit their jobs, or they do not take employment, or they change their work at double the rate of white parents facing a lack of care. And so that can become really problematic if you're a company that has made headway in your DEI initiatives. There's a lot of ground to be lost here. And there's a quote on the left from Joan Williams that I'll read: "Opening economies without schooling and childcare is a recipe for a generational wipeout of mothers' careers." So you just see that from every angle, this issue is impacting people, it's impacting HR, it's impacting businesses, it's impacting children, school systems, it's just in every direction. So what can be done? I will share that, that 2 out of 5 families in the United States have at least one child under the age of 18, and 64% of those have 2 employed parents. That's 30 million families. But there are 10 million single working moms and 5 million single working dads. And even those who can afford to pay for childcare are finding fewer options because in this pandemic, there's a shortage of supply. So there's really no easy solutions, but there are ways for employers to offer meaningful support to their employees. What you see here is Mercer's framework for how we talk about caregiving support. And there's 3 main areas that employers can focus on. I will tell you that the United States Chamber of Commerce did some surveys, and I think this is back in July, roughly that time frame. But asking employees what they needed from their employers. And overwhelmingly, employees said that scheduling and remote options were the most important, more so than some of the caregiving benefits that a lot of our clients are interested in. So here's our framework. We think of it in 3 ways. The first is flexibility at work. And this means changing when and how the work gets done. So, on-site versus work at home, shift and scheduling, how work is shared between people, full-time, part-time. The second category is flexibility from work. So this is all the leave and time off programs, maybe some that you had in place already, maybe some that you've implemented in the last few months, but all of that falls under flexibility from work. And then the last category is caregiving benefits, all the support resources and either referrals and subsidized care that you might be providing to your employees. So that's our framework, and I'm just going to take each of these piece by piece. Here's some data around, this is a live data that a live survey that Mercer conducted. We have been on an ongoing basis since March. We've been conducting global surveys live on our website. It's at mercer.us. You'll find these, and this is survey number 5. It's still live, it's still going. It started back in June. And as of right now, there's 503 respondents, but we asked, do you provide any of these caregiving benefits or support to assist employees who are returning to the workplace or working from home? And the 2 most prevalent are those 2 that I talked about. Employees continue to work remotely or flexible working to allow parents time to care for children. So those are the 2 most prevalent, which is nice because it aligns with what we're hearing employees need most. But there's several other areas there that each have less than 10% prevalence. So there's a lot of opportunity to support employees in other ways. So taking the first category, flexibility at work. And Mercer's point of view is that really all jobs can flex in some way. Doesn't mean that every job can be done from home or that every job can be done, on the weekends. But ultimately, every single job has one of the 5 dimensions is how it can flex, and it might be location, schedule, hours, changing the job description so that the actual work that needs to get done and how it's shared with others. But also roles and functions, reaching out to the non-traditional workforce, and then just using technology more. So there's several ways, and we're working with a lot of clients to look at their current their current jobs and think about how they can flex either long-term, but temporarily, or permanently. And I think that tends to be a big question with all of these programs. The business leaders are trying to figure out, does it make sense to look for flexibility like this if it's just if it's not permanent, and how much do you want to rebuild the way that your employees are allowed to work if you ultimately need to take it back at some point in the future? And that's a real concern. And so helping understand how things can work for long-term or permanent. We have a lot of experience across a lot of different industries, and we're helping employers figure that out. But that can be a pretty big undertaking. And I think it's an area where a lot of business leaders are potentially not being as open-minded as they could be. It's just very hard to imagine, or they're very attached to the culture that they've built and the work environment that they've built, and they're not ready to let go of it. The second area is around flexibility from work. So really we're talking about time off and what programs you offer. Maybe there are programs that you offered prior to COVID. And so we always say start with the existing programs. We're seeing a lot of employers just look what they already have: vacation, holidays, flexible work schedules, PTO, and really starting to expand that program in smaller ways to have a more inclusive caregiver definition, clarifying the process for requesting and getting approvals from managers, but also reconsidering intermittent leave. And a lot of employers are modeling their new programs after the Family First, the law that came out, even if they're not required to based on their size. And that's to address some of the more emergency pandemic leave programs that we're seeing. That does, the Families First tends to be the benchmark for that program. We're also talking to clients about how to return their employees to work and whether they do that in blocks or intermittently. And that can be a really big decision point. And so, so quite a lot of conversation going on around that. And then the third area is around childcare benefits. And so these might be referral, navigation, placement, and either backup care referrals services, but also backup care subsidies. So we're seeing a lot of the backup care vendors having a lot more flexibility for out-of-network caregivers, which may let you have a family member, a trusted family member, a trusted neighbor provide the child care and still qualify for the benefit. Beyond this, though, we're seeing some employers who are looking at pet care and home care programs so that they can also benefit their non-parent populations who are struggling. But at the end of the day, you know, there's a strain on the supply of qualified child care providers. And there also is a very, very high demand we're seeing on virtual education. And some of those are programs for, you know, pre-K age students and keeping them busy and teaching them some of the basic skills. But then for school age children, we're seeing some employers venture into virtual tutoring subsidies, or at least referral to those programs. Another hot topic really is around community-based co-ops and for childcare. And you know, some of this is happening informally. Parents are just really kind of syncing up with other parents in their community. But helping that along, especially if some of your populations don't live in a neighborhood like mine where you know, the kids play together and the moms and dads all know each other. If you have employees that live in really kind of different neighborhoods, they could really benefit from that just by partnering up and syncing up with others in their community who have similar needs so that they can share those responsibilities. We're also seeing some employers dive into permanent on-site pop-up daycare. So maybe they were considering offering on-site daycare for a long time and decided now's the time to pull that trigger. We're seeing probably more frequently in higher ed and in healthcare and in certain industries, but definitely a lot of spark around those conversations. And lastly, I would say we're seeing some employers just simply offer a one-time stipend. Just say, listen, back to school, we're going to give all employees with children X dollars to sort this out. And it may be paying someone else to care for your child. It may be ordering supplies because they're going to be homeschooled. However they need to use those dollars. Finally, here's just a little bit more information about why caregivers need support from their employers. And caregiving really does impact an employee's well-being across all areas, you know, mental, physical, financial. And so in our conversations with clients, it's been very helpful that we've been able to pull together some key studies to support the business case as they try to help their business leaders understand the need and help them so they can help with reducing turnover and getting people back to work safely. At the end of the day, though, safety really is the most important thing. And you know, this current crisis has a very immediate impact on people and businesses. And so we would encourage, you know, our advice really is to engage your employee population and do a lot of listening. Listen with empathy, really hear and understand their needs and understand that it varies by person. And at the end of the day, you'll have to balance the needs of the business and the employees. And there are solutions that are mutually beneficial for everyone, and some that are maybe even longer term than you would have expected. And then, you know, lastly, we would just encourage everyone to be flexible in their thinking about what could work for your business short-term, long-term, and maybe permanently. So thank you. I hope you found something useful, and I'm happy to help if you have any follow-up questions. Thank you again.